Ignoring the cybersecurity needs of your small business could end in a disaster. Many brands and companies all over the world, large and small, have been faced with a wave of breaches in their security. And it's not because the tools that we're using are anything particularly vulnerable. It's usually because humans are involved in the process and are just not covering the basics. Now, Essential 8 is a framework that helps people do exactly that. Cover the basics and make sure that you've got the right things handled for your business. And even though it's aimed at businesses in Australia, this can be applied to companies no matter where you are in the world. I'm going to take you through Essential 8, the principles for small business cybersecurity, and give you some practical steps on how you can implement it yourself. Now, where I'm from in Australia, cybersecurity is a huge issue right now. Australia is a land of small businesses, with over 98% of businesses having less than 20 employees. And we're a rich country. We have a target on our back. The cyber criminals who want to get access to that sweet, sweet money in the bank accounts of business owners. Now, the challenge that many Australian business owners are facing currently is that our cybersecurity incidences have grown multiple folds over the last few years. And it's because it's pretty easy to trick a business owner with a little bit of engineering to hand over money from a bank account where they think that they're sending money to a supplier, but they're actually sending money to someone who is going to ship that money overseas and it's going to disappear quickly. Now, many of these scams have simple ways of protecting against them, as long as you get the basics of your security right. Unfortunately, for most business owners, security sits in the too hard bucket. And I get it. You've got a million priorities yelling at you, trying to vie for your attention. And unfortunately, being something technical, security isn't always something that business owners are comfortable in doing themselves. Now, Essential 8 has been created specifically to help small and medium-sized business owners navigate, well, what are the basics that we should be thinking about with security? Because nowadays it's so vast and there are so many different angles that threats might cause issues for your business. Taking care of your business security is a serious issue. Recently, laws have been passed in Australia and in many other parts of the world where if personal information of your customers happens to be breached on your watch, there are severe penalties which can be applied to the business owners or directors involved in a business. Many countries require mandatory reporting if there has been a breach of personal information, and they also can come with some pretty harsh personal penalties for directors or owners of businesses. So it's important to get this right. Now, apart from you getting in trouble, there's also the reputation damage for your business, and that may impact the jobs of your team. If you've got a large data breach and it turns into a PR nightmare, like it has for many large organizations where there's been serious data breaches, well, that can potentially destroy your business. And many small businesses will not survive a serious cybersecurity event. Some notable examples are Target, who had 40 million customer records exposed, including credit card information. And that breach cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Equifax was another quite well-known one in the last recent times, where 147 million people had their credit records and other information leaked as well. Now, it's become almost farcical that every week, it seems, there's another large organization that's having issues. But that does nothing to speak of the thousands of small business owners every month being targeted and exploited by cyber criminals and losing money. And unfortunately, I've seen this firsthand, where what seems like an innocent email that comes from one of your team members, letting you know that a payment needs to be made to a supplier, of which a name that you recognize and an amount that you recognize, with, of course, slightly altered bank details. Once a payment is then made, well, that money is then gone. And business owners are losing tens of thousands of dollars to these scams every day. Let's get into how we can fix it. There's 8 areas of Essential 8, and think of these as getting the basics right, but they should also be expanded upon as well. There are certifications that you can take on, like SMB 1001, which is a fairly new certification, but it's effectively a level of basic quality control in your IT processes within your business to ensure that the cybersecurity of your business is in check. Now, if you're interested in getting access to consulting services from our professional team who can help you implement any of these, you can click the link right down below and have a chat to us. We'd be very happy to help you out. Let's get on to the Essential 8. So the first one is application control. And this says that only approved applications can be executed on your business systems. So what does that mean? Well, it means that to not let your staff willy-nilly download or use any application that they wish. Now, thankfully, if you're using something like Google Chrome, you can restrict certain plugins or apps from being used. If you're using Chrome OS, like Chromebooks, well, there's plenty of ways that you can lock down those machines as well. If you have a central email address system like Google Workspace and people want to go ahead and add extra single sign-on applications and use the Google login for other apps, there's settings in the administration panel which will allow you to create a whitelist of apps that are enabled and allowed for your team. The second tenet is patch applications. Now, this is making sure that you've got patches up to date and basically installing updates. Now, typically this is going to involve somebody managing what we in the IT world call endpoints, but they're the computers in your business, right? Making sure that updates are enabled, making sure that operating systems are being updated. Most of those things happen automatically on the operating system level, but the actual applications need some way of checking that things are actually being done. This is probably best handled by an IT consultant or an IT staff member, but it's important to make sure it's done because security vulnerabilities are exploited when applications are out of date. Third is configuring Microsoft Office macro settings. And macros are a way that viruses can easily get into Windows-based computers. Now, if you're using Chrome OS, you don't have this problem. If you're using a Mac, you're probably safe as well. But restricting who can run and execute macros inside the Microsoft ecosystem can go a long way to protecting your company. Now, you may decide, you know what, I'm only going to allow the super data nerds using Excel who want to have macros running automated scripts and those kind of things. Sure, let just a couple of people use it in the business, but make sure that you're not letting everyone do it. Number 4 is called user application hardening. Now, this is configuring web browsers to block things like Flash, blocking Java. There are some internet technologies which have been around for a long time, and bit by bit, they've become less and less useful for the internet. We've moved on to standards like HTML5, and many of these can safely just kind of be turned off. Now, Google does a pretty good job of this inside of Chrome, automatically, bit by bit, removing compatibility for some of these older applications. But if you've got some staff members who are still using different browsers on their computers, you might want to be mindful of this. My personal policy is for everyone in the business to use Google Chrome because we can synchronize it to our Google Workspace accounts. We can deploy policies down to Chrome. And there's other useful videos that I've got on where you might want to use Chrome policies to improve the productivity of your team. But as far as you can, you want to lock down the use of certain outdated technologies so they're just not a problem anymore. Here's 5, administration privileges. And this is about making sure that only dedicated administrator accounts actually do the administering of your business. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, for most of us as business owners, if you signed up to Google Workspace yourself or somebody set it up for you, you're probably the super administrator of your Google Workspace account, meaning you've got privileges to do absolutely everything inside your account. Well, that is not really the best way of handling things because effectively it means that if you're logging into that account all day and you're logged in on multiple devices, you lose one of those devices or one of those devices is compromised, and all of a sudden somebody else has access to your whole business because they can access the administrative features of Google Workspace or other apps. Now, the thinking here is to have a separate administration-only account that you use only in the time when you need to administer. Things like adding a new staff member and creating a new user, resetting someone's password, enabling features, or whitelisting applications. They're the kind of things that ideally you want to have a dedicated administrator account to use, so you're not using your everyday account to perform administrative functions. The other reason where this is really useful is if you've got another staff member or maybe a business partner as a designated backup administrator, well, they can't accidentally make changes that mess with the system that you're working on. Sometimes people who aren't so tech savvy will be trying to fix or troubleshoot something. They click a button and unfortunately the wrong thing happens. But you may not even notice that they've been in the admin panel. Well, locking down an administrator account to a dedicated account makes anyone who needs to get something done take that extra step. And that extra step might help them to think about things before they execute them. Number 6, patch operating systems. Now, when you are rolling out updates to your business, you're going to have probably a mix of Windows machine, Mac machines, and thankfully, they're mostly self-updating. But it doesn't hurt to have a management app running on those machines so you can get an idea of whether or not they're up to date and educating your staff if they're working from home to make sure that they're keeping their computer up to date as well. If it means you've got to pay for licenses for the latest version, that's a good idea because new versions of software will always come with security fixes to ensure that there are no vulnerabilities that someone might be able to take advantage of. Number 7 is multi-factor authentication. And thankfully, this is enabled by default for Google Workspace. When you first sign in, it'll ask you to add your mobile phone number and switch that on, but it may not be enabled for all of your staff. And so in the admin panel, you can switch on two-factor authentication as a policy to make sure that everybody in your business is locked down on two-factor. And let me tell you, if you take one thing from this list, this is the one that I want you to action, because this will save 60 to 80% of phishing attempts on your business. Quite often when someone wants to get access to someone's username and password to steal access inside an account, all they need to do is send a dummy email that looks convincing enough that you click on and prompts you to re-sign in. And many of us are typing a password back in to those prompts. Now, in most cases, having two-factor authentication set up will completely eliminate their ability to get into your account, even if they have your username and your password, because of course you need that second factor device. This is mandatory to switch on for your whole team and to enforce that everybody has it set up as well. If you're going to switch it on in the admin panel, you can set a grace period. So your existing staff and new staff will have a week to set up their new two-factor authentication steps. And my recommendation is that people don't use SMS text messaging to gain access to their second factor. The reason for that is, unfortunately, scammers have become pretty nifty. And if someone has access to your personal information, like your date of birth, they can easily call your customer care line for your ISP or your phone provider and pretend to be you. And they'll switch your phone number to a new SIM card and then get into your account that way. It happens more often than you think. And it also happens a lot in Australia. We thought it was only the US that were getting hit by scams like that, but it's happening a lot for us here locally as well. So two-factor, very important. Make sure that's rolled out absolutely everywhere. Finally, number 8 is regular backups. And not only backing up your local computer, if you're on a Mac, you can plug in Time Machine. There's plenty of apps for Windows for backups as well. But most of us are working in the cloud. And so we need to back up our cloud data as well. Now, if you're using something like Google Workspace and you want to be able to store all of your data somewhere safe, there are tools that will synchronize your Google Drive down to your local computer, but most businesses end up running out of space. My recommendation would be a cloud-to-cloud backup, and you can chat to our team for some options about that. We've got amazing discounts for customers. And if you're not yet a customer, we'd love to chat to you about that, to back up your Google Workspace account and all of the data inside it. Now, some of the concepts I've covered here are technical, and some of them you might want to get help with an IT consultant. You can click on the link below to get started with our team if you'd like some advice on how to implement these. And if you're outside Australia, you can use these principles in your business no matter where you are. They're useful for all small to medium-sized businesses to get the basics of cybersecurity down. Now, of course, it makes sense to have insurance and to have an action plan if a breach were to happen, but the best medicine is always prevention, right? So making sure that you've got these things implemented is going to help ensure your business is protected as much as possible. I want to help you prevent financial loss and business interruption loss. And of course, no one wants to have to close their business and let go of their employees, stop serving their customers, and the devastation for a business owner losing their business could be quite serious in your personal life. So let's work together and get our businesses secure. Follow along for more if you'd like more help.